Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Be Bold America. I'm Mike Clancy, Be Bold America's co-host. Jill will be back next time. Our program today is How to Mobilize to Defend Democracy, and we will be talking with Gary Lux about his new book, We Are the Power to Win the Future. We are the last line of defense in preserving our democracy. There are no knights in shining armor coming to save us. There is only us, and the hard work that must be done. Urgently, we are the cavalry. Gary's new book describes tactics and strategies we need to embrace to defeat MAGA. Broken down by red, blue, purple states, it provides specific step-by-step information about opportunities for you to make a meaningful difference. We need to transform outrage and concern into action before it's too late. And Gary's new book, We Are the Power to Win the Future, tells us how to do just that. We have big things to do. Our interview guest today is Gary Lux. As an environmental attorney, policy advisor, and grassroots organizer, Gary has spent his career turning expertise into action. He has written environmental policy briefing papers for California Governor Gavin Newsom and the late U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein, co-authored leading environmental law guides, and published over 50 environmental law articles. He also brings that same passion into the classroom as adjunct faculty at the Presidio Graduate School's Sustainability MBA program, inspiring the next generation of changemakers. As the founder of Progressive Action East Bay and Resistance Action East Bay, he has built one of California's most active grassroots networks, mobilizing communities, raising millions of dollars, and delivering critical support to Democrats in swing districts across the country. Hello, Gary. Welcome to Be Bold America.
Hi. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Gary, first of all, thank you for all your activism working for progressive causes over the years. And congratulations on your new book, We Are the Power to Win the Future. I've read it, and I think it is excellent. What inspired you to write the book, and what audience did you have in mind?
Well, I wrote it primarily because I felt and very much feel the challenge we're facing is that the pundits have saturated the problem, the discussion around the problem we're facing. We know what the problem is from every angle. We know the what and we know the why we're here. But virtually no one is talking about how we are part of the solution, how we engage to make a difference. And essentially, the pundits will regularly say, well, it's up to us, rhetorically saying, hey, just get out and vote and get organized. But it's just a nice platitude. And I just kept thinking, well, where's the roadmap? And so I wrote the first book a year ago, You Are Not Alone, a Roadmap to Effective Political Action,
Yes.
on the 100th day.
It's good. I've read it too.
Thank you. And you know, the whole idea was to fill the gap on how people can engage, because so many people then and now are feeling disempowered, anxious, deeply concerned, and feeling lost. And,
Yes.
And even, seasoned activists have sort of felt after 2024 that notwithstanding our efforts, what more can we do, and just feeling disempowered and disenfranchised. So that's primarily the reason why I felt the need to write the book, which was to give people a roadmap, not only how they can step into action, whether they're in a blue region of the country or congressional district or a purple region or a red region. There's plenty of opportunities that I share with a menu of choices that align with people's talent, resources, time, effort, relationships, networks.
Yeah.
Everyone has something to deliver regardless of where you live. And then the other part about the book that I felt the need to share, which is two thoughts. One, people are frustrated and disenchanted with the Democratic Party nationally and at the state level. And there is, reason to be disappointed. Some could argue there's, a level of political malpractice that may have taken place. But it's time to lick our wounds and move on, because we will fail if we demonize and don't support the Democratic Party. It's circular firing squad type behavior that just does not serve us. And so what needs to happen is a coming together in partnership, not only with supporting the Democratic Party financially and otherwise, but the 80 or so NGOs, grassroots organizations that I share in the book, categorized by function, whether it's getting the vote out or protecting the vote or raising money, among others. So the book primarily was designed to address the how we get there, and to invite people to step into connecting with one or more of the grassroots organizations in partnership with the national or state Democratic Party.
Okay, great. Let's take a look at the larger context. I think many of our listeners will agree that our democracy is fragile and that Donald Trump, his administration, and his enablers pose a very serious threat to it. Can you list the most important ways in which they imperil democracy in our country?
Yeah, sure. Where do you begin, right?
It's a long list.
Yeah, it's a long list. And, they're basically ignoring the Constitution. They've weaponized the Department of Justice, not serving the people, but serving the president. The corruption, of course, is just unprecedented, violating the emoluments clause domestically and internationally. They're working really hard to disenfranchise voters, and the appointments are just to the cabinet are people who are not qualified, not serious, from Secretary Kennedy, who was anti-science, anti-vaccine, to Noam
yes.
for
DHS. She was head of DHS until she got fired.
Yeah, and then just with Elon Musk and the Doge effort, seeking fraud that really wasn't there, and basically undermining the USAID and basically taking away much needed funding for food to really vulnerable people and healthcare. And I could go on, but and of course the courts. And I'm really concerned about the courts because and Congress. They're not we just basically have a supine Congress and a supine court that are not representing the other two equal powers to balance out a rogue president who's basically leading a regime, not an administration.
Oh, I agree with you. In the book, you talk about the example of Viktor Orban in Hungary as an analog to what is happening in America. Can you give our listeners a brief history of Orban's rise to power, how he managed to stay in power for 16 years, how he was recently voted out of office overwhelmingly, and how that evolution can serve as a template, perhaps, for what we need to do in our country? Yeah,
it's amazing the parallels that are in play. And essentially, Orban came to power, was in power for 16 years, and he methodically undermined democracy and, replaced that with an autocratic regime. He captured the courts. He amended the constitution of the country to cement his power. He kneecapped independent press and led a propaganda campaign to silence his opposition. And he demonized the EU, of which his country was a member, immigrants, and Ukraine. And so that was the playbook that autocrats have followed. It's the playbook that Vice President Vance and Trump and others are following. And thankfully, the people never gave up. There was a satirical two-tailed dog organization, kind of like the inflatable frogs in Portland and elsewhere, that remained relevant, and they engaged in political humor, and they exposed the lawlessness and the assault on the systems of checks and balances. And so even though the independent press was largely silent, the satirists brought humor to what was going on and exposed the corrupt policies there. And ultimately, Peter Magyar exposed the corruption where, and here's an amazing parallel, where there was a defendant who was convicted of sexually abusing children, and someone in Orban's administration pardoned that person.
Oh, really?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I mean, here we are. The parallels are uncanny. So anywhere from the inflatable frogs and the satirists to the Epstein files and the pardoning of someone convicted of sexually abusing children. I mean, it's unbelievable parallels.
Yeah, and of course, Trump and Vance campaigned for Orban. Vance actually went to the country, went to Hungary, and spoke at least one rally on behalf of Orban.
Yeah, well, that's the playbook, right? And what's encouraging is that, and despite the pain that the people in his country suffered, they didn't give up, and they held on, and it's an opportunity for us to be inspired by the fact that you can't give up, and there's no sprint to get out of this. And this, in my view, and what I share about in the book, is we have to take engagement with political action as a duty of citizenship and service.
Mm-hmm.
And we've taken for granted so much of what our forefathers and ancestors and people who died on the battlefield delivered for us. And I'm guilty as anyone, thinking democracy would always be here and rights and the rule of law would be here. And as I say, we are the cavalry because no one's going to save us. And it's just like jury duty. We have to engage, and you don't have to spend a career doing it, but we have to make this part of our everyday experience because it is a marathon. It is not a sprint, and it will take all of us to engage because there's no one in shining armor here to deliver us to a better place other than by ourselves.
Absolutely, you're right. In Chapter 2 of the book, you list 7 crises currently facing us that imperil our democracy. Can you quickly list and summarize them?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to share, but anywhere from like the reverse Robin Hood around income inequality, which has always been a challenge for the last couple of decades, but is notably portending to be so much worse under this administration. The big betrayal bill that was passed not even a year ago is designed to enrich, millionaires and billionaires at the expense of the working class, the middle class and the poor, and it's projected to enrich the top 10% by I think at 2.7% in the next 10 years, and deprive the lower economic echelon by about 3.1% in that same time frame. So it's reverse Robin Hood. It's just antithetical to fairness and justice. And we don't have fair representation, because of gerrymandering. We have a skewed power structure, and so that of course that's part of the problem. We can talk about that a little later.
Yeah.
So you've got the transfer of wealth. They've slashed Social Security and Medicare. We're here in California, and California is going to lose $100 million. $100 million because of the funds that would have otherwise backfilled our Medicare program, and it's going to. So in the coming budget cycle or two, California is going to have a huge healthcare crisis because the funds won't be there to serve the medical needs, and the medical professionals will be impacted as well. So that's the issue of the billionaire's tax, which we could talk about.
Okay, hold those thoughts. We're going to take a quick break here. We'll come back to it. You are listening to Be Bold America on KSQD 90.7, 89.5, and 89.7 FM. Many voices, one station. Live stream globally from ksqd.org website. Our topic today is how to mobilize to defend democracy. And we are speaking with Gary Lux, author, environmental attorney, policy advisor, and grassroots organizer. I'm your host, Mike Clancy.
Hey, Tom Hartman here. You know how I always say democracy is not a spectator sport? Well, Jill Cody knows the rules of the game, and she delivers it to you straight on Be Bold America, Friday at 5 p.m. right here on KSQD. Jill brings in the best political thinkers of our time who will show you what to keep doing, stop doing, and start doing to support democracy in our world. That's Be Bold America, Friday at 5 p.m. right after the Tom Hartman program, right here on K-Squid, 89.5, 89.7, and 90.7 FM and ksqd.org. Tag, you're it.
Well, I saw a pot of crown, but I'm out on the road again. I'm on the road again.
Whether you're on the road or at home, you'll never be without your squid. With the KSQD app, you can take the squid everywhere. Connect with your favorite host. Learn about new music. Text a request or comment. Browse our podcasts. Record a message and listen uninterrupted while you browse. Download the KSQD mobile app for iOS or Android at ksqd.org or in your app store.
Bam, bam, bee, 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 boom, bam, bam, bee, 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 boom, bam.
Exploring the intersections of rhythmic music from New Orleans, Kingston, Jamaica, and Havana, Cuba. The Downbeat Shuffle program, Fridays at 6 p.m. on KSQD.
Today our topic is how to mobilize to defend democracy, and we are speaking with environmental attorney and well-known pro-democracy activist Gary Lux about his new book, We Are the Power to Win the Future. Now, Gary, let's take back up with those 7 crises currently facing our democracy.
Yeah, we were just talking about just how with the reverse Robin Hood and the big betrayal of the bill, it not only will deprive states like California of funds from Medicare and also impacting Social Security, but it'll also deprive, as projected, 17 million people from Medicaid assistance in the next 10 years.
Wow.
And then just I think in the last day or two, Vice President Vance indicated they're going to withhold $1.3 billion in Medicaid because I think they were, if I remember correctly, claiming that California has not been managing fraud in a Medicaid program or a Medi-Cal program, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then the health safety net, aside from 17 million people projected to lose health care, just there's the assault on science and vaccines with the measles breakout that should have been avoided. And, good luck in light of the next potential pandemic or some version of, a big health scare.
Mm-hmm.
And then, immigration and the lack of due process that has taken place in a lot of our major cities from, L.A. to Portland to Chicago and Minneapolis, and how they're not only depriving people of their Fourth Amendment rights to avoid illegal search and seizure, but they're not giving them due process in the Fifth Amendment, which is just, fundamental to a civil society and our constitutional order. And then, of course, they're undermining the free speech First Amendment by, putting pressure on the comedians they don't like, from Jimmy Kimmel to Colbert.
Yeah.
And so they're chilling free speech, even threatening the judiciary for rulings against that they find distasteful. And then, of course, going after their political enemies, basically weaponizing the DOJ against Comey and Senators Slotkin and Mark Kelly. So, and lastly, I'll just say, the foreign affairs fiascos, from undermining NATO with attempts to conquer Greenland to basically running roughshod on Venezuela, even though Venezuela's leader was not a good actor. It was certainly against the world order of how we do things, and then not supporting Ukraine, and then going into a war by choice in Iran that's having worldwide repercussions, economically, among other reasons. So it's a mess.
It's a lot, yeah.
And we spend a lot of time worrying about it, but I think you can assuage your concern by getting engaged is what people need to be doing.
Yes, absolutely right. That's a big part of what your book is about. You mentioned gerrymandering. The recent Supreme Court decision that essentially killed the Voting Rights Act, and the recent decision by the Virginia Supreme Court striking down a redistricting map that would have been favorable to the Democrats and had been approved by the voters, have given the Republicans a decided advantage in the gerrymandering arms race that Trump started in Texas. This seems to be a huge attack on democracy in our country. What's your viewpoint on that, and what can and should we do about it?
Yeah, it's unconscionable. It's basically not following precedent. The Supreme Court, I call the extreme court.
Yeah.
It's an illegitimate court that is just basically a political arm, but not a judicial arm. And essentially, the Calais case, which basically emasculated the Voting Rights Act, brings us back to Jim Crow era.
Yeah.
And the 1965 Voting Rights Act is basically quite bare bones and not helpful.
Yeah.
The latest projections indicate that should the southern states succeed in these late-breaking, mid-cycle gerrymandering efforts, that they would end up with somewhere in the range of a net of 11 extra seats, with Utah, California, and possibly Virginia, but not likely. California has about 6+ seats. They'll end up with about 17 or 18 seats. So we have headwinds against us.
Yeah.
And in the near term, long term, in the near term, we have to win by a tidal wave in fall.
Absolutely right.
It can't be close because
that's right.
Contest a close election. So it's up to us to do all we can and have no regrets. So that's the near-term effort, and there's so much that I hope people will take advantage of in the book in the near term. And in the longer term, we have to be playing in unfriendly territory from now on. We've only been focusing on the last couple decades, on 6 to 7 states. And in the Clinton era, they focused on like 30+ states. And the new Democratic chair, Ken Martin, has a 50-state strategy to invest in all 50 states. And there are two reasons why that's so important. One, we have to compete in the South, because as the demographics shift, as people move from the blue upper Midwest and Northeast to the South, Southeast, and Southwest, the southern states are going to have more voting power. And so we have to compete in Florida. We have to compete in Texas, or we will be left behind. And so the 50-state strategy is important for the long term, and we got to build the bench. And the other reason why building that bench is so important, because gerrymandering takes place at the state legislative level.
Yeah.
And so the Republicans in MAGA have a distinct advantage in bicameral legislatures in terms of majorities and governor's mansions. And so if we don't compete in the other 50 states, the purple and red states, we will lose the battle on gerrymandering. We see what's happening here. So we have to build the bench. We have to focus in the southern states for the long run. And in the near term, it's all hands on deck to win by a blue tidal wave. Well,
I absolutely agree with that. And I have to tell you, I'm feeling a lot of anxiety about all this. And that brings me to a really great quote from your book, and that is, action is the antidote for anxiety. I think that's a great saying, and we're going to come back to that in a little bit. But right now, I have something special for you, Gary, and that is Louise Hartman has been writing political lyrics and putting them to song. They are poignant, and I think Jill found one that relates to our topic. We're going to play it after a couple of promos, and then I'd like to get your take on the song.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah.
Hey, Squeedies, it's me, Jennifer, from the Zombie Jamboree, and you're listening to KSQD 90.7 FM and KSQD.org. Join us every week at 8 p.m. for your Friday night mixtape, the cornucopia of specially selected songs for your listening pleasure known as the Zombie Jamboree. C-Dub and I always enjoy your company. That's Friday nights at 8 on KSQD 90.7 FM.
We've seen the warnings, the lessons are clear. Leaders must lead when the crisis is near. Not with silence, but with action bold. The fight's not won by staying cold. Trump's machine spins lies every day, while truth gets lost in the games they play. It's not the reality, but what people believe that shapes the choices they choose to weave. Who will fight for America's future? Who will stand for the people's voice? When the darkness comes to claim our rights, who will rise? Who will make the choice? The storm is rising, the shadows grow. Truth is slipping where the lies still flow. In the silence, we hear the call. Who will rise? Who will make the choice? Billionaires whisper, their power expands, while the people's voices slip through their hands. Social media twists the truth and the past. Who will fight for the future to last? Who will fight for America's future? Who will stand for the people's voice? When the darkness comes to claim our rights, who will rise? Who will make the choice? It's not just votes, it's the fight we bring. The stories we tell, the songs we sing. Every word, every deed, every stand we take determines the future that we will make. The people are waiting, the hour is late. Will courage arrive or surrender to fate? The stakes are clear, the lines are drawn. Who will fight before freedom's gone? Kamala's gone quiet, Biden's too still. The airwaves echo with Trump's strong will. But leadership means standing tall. Who will answer democracy's call? Who will fight for America's future? Who will stand for the people's voice? When the darkness comes to claim our rights, who will rise? Who will make the choice? We are the ones who can change the story, who can rise for justice, truth and glory. The fight is ours, the time is now. Who will stand for America's vow?
If you are just joining us, we are speaking with Gary Lux, environmental attorney, pro-democracy activist, and author of the excellent new book, We Are the Power to Win the Future. Now, Gary, we just heard Louise Hartman's Who Will Fight for America's Future. Do you have any thoughts to share after hearing it?
Yes, that was really well done and inspiring. And yeah, several thoughts came to mind. It lines up with some of the things we talked about earlier, which is, it's basically saying there's no cavalry but ourselves.
Yep.
And what that means is everybody has a lane and everybody has something to offer. And, whether you're a lawyer or a paralegal, we need you to take Election Day off. And we need you to train to protect the vote, because it will be really challenged from a free and fair election standpoint like never before this fall.
Yeah.
And so lawyers can do things. Artists can do benefit concerts. And there's a concert that will be on June 14th. I just learned about the other day from Indivisible. It'll be on June 14th, which will be the one-year anniversary of the first No Kings and also the birthday of Donald Trump. And
that's right.
There will be a event. I think it's going to be called, the National Day of Action. So June 14th, the National Day of Action, and that's going to be a concert that'll be streaming. So another example where musicians or artists can play and be part of the solution. And then shoe leather. Everybody, as many people as possible, need to commit to not only taking Election Day off, but following some of the things we can talk about on how you can deliver the vote, from committing time and effort. Those in Santa Cruz, you could drive to the Central Valley. There are a couple of really close races in Congressional District 13 and 22 near Fresno or Modesto. And a weekend for an hour or a day or two can make a difference on knocking on doors because of how effective that can be. So there's a lot of phone calls and text banking and postcarding. And so there's a lot we can do and be part of that solution.
Yeah, very good. Gary, in the book, you have a really excellent section on how disinformation works. I'm going to read the subheadings of this section. I think there's about 4, one by one, and ask you to briefly comment on each. The first one is, we all filter the news through what we already believe.
Yeah, so we all have our own biases, and so my son, who's a 20-year-old student at Cal, he'll challenge me on my bias. And, and I'm guilty as anyone, being in my own information bubble. No matter who we are, we have that information bias. And so we have to be honest with ourselves. And one thought that is overarching here is and I'll just come back to your question, but we have to support local newspapers.
Yeah.
Investigative journalism is critical for our democracy. Jefferson said that he'd rather have newspapers without a government than a government without newspapers.
Yeah.
And so we have to be informed and be aware of our information bias, no matter where we are, no matter who we're talking to.
Yeah. And number 2 is, disinformation is built to make you feel, not think.
Yeah, the emotionality of it with the amygdala in our brain, the fight or flight reaction really works. And the Koch brothers and others from Fox and others who've been at this for decades have really built a system that understands and recognizes that emotionality, anger, and fear drive behavior, and it overrides our prefrontal cortex, the thinking, reasoning side of things.
Yeah.
So you can't reason with someone when they're emotionally impacted. And so that's a challenge, right? And speaking facts to someone who's locked into their view, their bias, and they're angry and fearful, you're not going to succeed with that. And the only way you can make some progress potentially is by building rapport. And it's basic, but it's true. And last night, we, in my Indivisible group, the Resistance Action East Bay Indivisible, we hosted the founder of Move On, Joan Blades. And Joan spoke to our team about how we can re-engage with civility and find rapport in her organization called Living Room Conversations. Living Room Conversations is all about how you can reconnect with the polarized environment in which we live and the relationships we've lost or are on life support.
Yeah.
And so she has this whole methodology on how we can begin by finding common ground. We all care about our kids and safety, and finding that rapport, and then building bridges. And it won't solve the problem between now and November necessarily, but it's something that we need to be focused on from a civility and return to normalcy over time.
Yeah. Number 3 on your list is, attacking the message feels like attacking the person.
Yeah, so essentially, if you're locked into your identity and your mindset and your friends, colleagues that are in your bubble, if you will, in your corner, you can't attack. You're basically, it's like, not that it necessarily is a cult, but the concepts of how cults work is you can't reason with someone with facts and information because you're cutting at the core of their identity and their comfort level. And so there's the cognitive dissonance. You won't break through with that, but it comes back to what I shared before. To the extent you might make progress, it's about building relationship and understanding. And to the extent possible, and it's not always possible, but reminding people that there are, with unequivocally reliable sources of news like Reuters and the Associated Press and NPR, of course, and anyway, and others.
Yeah.
So, that addresses that one there.
Yeah, and the final one, hearing something over and over makes it feel true.
Yeah, and we know that, right? We've seen that strategy in action, and that's why I think it's critical to have independent sources of news and information and journalism to provide opportunities to push back against the disinformation so that people can have an opportunity to hear the other side. Because Fox and others know that repetition of a lie becomes true if there's no intervention to point out the flaws or the dishonesty around it.
Yeah, you see that all the time at press conferences from the White House. And back to what you mentioned earlier, the thing that's really quite disturbing around free speech and this concept of independent journalism is just the fact that there's hand-picked press corps in the White House. And so we're in really dystopian, autocratic times, and it's all hands on deck to get past it. Yeah, for sure. Well, it's time to take a break. You are listening to Be Bold America on KSQD 89.5, 89.7, and 90.7 FM. Many voices, one station. I'm Mike Clancy, Be Bold America's co-host.
The Lonely and the Damned happens here on KSQD every Friday at midnight. Join your hostess with the mostess, Ingrid, on an escapade through maddening delights. From monologue to stories, poetry and prose, along with music to certainly titillate your senses and make you think about things you might not want to. That's The Lonely and the Damned, Fridays at midnight, right here on KSQD, Santa Cruz.
K-Squid goes mobile. With your new KSQD app, you can take the squid everywhere. Connect with your favorite host. Learn about new music. Text a request or comment. Browse our podcasts. Record a message. Listen uninterrupted while browsing. Get our iOS or Android-friendly app in your app store or at ksqd.org.
This is Austin Powers, baby. You're listening to the only radio station groovier than the BBC.
What? You mean K-Squid?
K-Squid.
K-Squid, isn't it?
K-Squid, KSQD Santa Cruz. Online anytime at ksqd.org.
Yeah, baby.
Okay, Gary, you also identify 4 types of people that we typically have to engage with when we're dealing with disinformation. I'll list them, and then if you can maybe make a few comments. Number 1, the casual news stroller. 2, the Fox true believer. 3, the person who does not know what to believe. And finally, 4, the true believer.
Yeah, so the casual news scroller is probably the most reachable person. They get their news from social media, and they're not committed necessarily to a particular news source. So as I mentioned a moment ago, you can offer them, because they're persuadable in the sense of being open to other more reliable sources of news from the Associated Press, as I mentioned, the Reuters, PBS NewsHour, and NPR. So they're definitely the most reachable, the casual news scroller. And the second one,
Fox True Believer.
Yeah, Fox True Believer thing. You know, they're more challenging, right? And I'll back up and say one thing that I haven't shared, which is I have a friend of mine, Bill Shireman, who was a key player in actually getting the bottle bill passed years ago, AB 2020. Bill wrote a book called In This Together. And Bill basically argues, as does the founder of MoveOn, Joan Blades, that 70% of us believe in 90% of the issues. 90% of the people more or less care about gun safety, right, among other issues. But it's the 15% on the extreme right and the 15% on the far left that are harder to persuade. But the point here is that 70% of us, give or take, believe in 90% of the issues. And so, but the Fox True Believer is seeing things through this skewed lens. And ideally, the only way to potentially break through, as I said before, is like building rapport and finding out what people care about in common. Keeping the family safe and their kids productive, affordability, those kinds of things that everyone cares about, right? And as Joan mentioned, Joan Blades from MoveOn with Living Room Conversations, that's the opportunity. And Braver Angels and these other organizations that try to bring people together and break down the barriers of disinformation and find common ground to launch a conversation with civility and beginning the conversation with ground rules of civility as well.
Yeah. In your book, you mention 80 grassroots organizations and a lot of great information. It's just a fantastic reference. 80 is a big number, though. If you were pressed to name the top 3 to 5 most important and effective of these grassroots organizations for defending our democracy, which would you choose?
Yeah, we put a lot of effort. Some of my volunteers helped pull this list together, and we list the organizations, as I mentioned, need to be in partnership with the Democratic Party nationally and at the state level. And I would say one of my favorite is Hopium, the Hopium Chronicles. And any of your listeners who are familiar with Simon Rosenberg or the Hopium Chronicles would, I hope, agree that he is one of the most astute, insightful thought leaders when it comes to policy and politics. And Simon Rosenberg with the Hopium Chronicles, who puts out a podcast on a daily basis and has really remarkable interviews with players that matter. He was the one that predicted in 2022 that there would not be a post-presidency red wave. Mm-hmm. And so in any event, he's really credible. And what I like about the Hopium is that it's hard these days to be consumers of the news, and a lot of people have checked out. And what he does every morning in Washington, D.C. is he spends hours going through sources and synthesizes where we are, where we're going, and Hopium is hope with a plan. And I'm a news junkie, and he doesn't miss a darn thing. So anyway, I highly recommend Hopium, both in terms of giving us a roadmap of where we need to go and make sense of the complexity of the issues. And third, he has the Audacious Expansion Fund, which is really focused on building political power in critical swing states and for this near-term election. I also love Indivisible. We're an Indivisible group. Mm-hmm. There are about 2,500 Indivisible groups. And I feel like, people, if you want to do something and you're not sure what to do, where to go, join an Indivisible group. There's bound to be one within a short distance of where you live. And our Indivisible group started 10 years ago. We're up to 1,200 volunteers. And it's a home for a lot of us as we navigate this rough time.
Yeah.
The other organization I think is fantastic is Activate America. Mm. And Activate America used to be called Flip the 14. And that was back in 2018 when there were 14 Republican congressional seats that were targeted and 7 flipped from red to blue due to lots of people's involvement, including Flip the 14, which became Activate America.
Okay.
And we give the first seed money to them, and I'm really proud of that.
Great.
I'll leave you with one more, which is the States Project. The States Project is amazing, and in order for us to win the long game, we need to invest in state legislatures and governors' mansions. And as I mentioned earlier, the Republicans and MAGA have a majority of the governor's mansions and a majority of the legislative houses. And if we're ever going to build the bench, we need to invest there because they appoint the Supreme Court justices in the state. They deal with the reapportionment. So the state's project is really effective. There are many others, but those are four that I'd highly recommend.
Okay, fantastic. We're getting near the end here, Gary. What advice would you give to young people who are thinking about a career in political activism and community organizing?
We need you. Absolutely. Yeah, I would say, there's so much that people can do. As a young organizer, as I mentioned earlier, join an indivisible group, and that's where you can learn a lot about getting the vote out and how, the grassroots side of politics works. But there's so many boards and commissions that people can join at the city and county level where you really learn about policy, build relationships, and can grow into something beyond that. I have a good friend who's Darrell Steinberg, former Senate pro tem of the legislature, and Darrell will say, you don't need the title to necessarily make a difference. And so it really comes down to making a lifelong commitment to engaging in whichever way you can with your talent, resources, passions, connections, and finances. So from joining an indivisible group, join Activate America, join Swing Left, any of these organizations I list in the book, that would be a great start. And then if you really have the aptitude, interest, find your way in a local commission, board appointment, and that type of thing.
Fantastic. That's really great advice. Now, Gary, one of our traditions here at Be Bold America is to ask our guests what they think our listeners should keep doing, stop doing, and start doing. Our future depends on it. So in the context of protecting our democracy, what do you think we need to keep doing?
I think we need to read this book and do what's there if you're in a blue, purple, or red region.
Yeah.
And that means being a citizen and being a participant and not a complainer. Think of it this way. How many, we're talking, for 45 minutes here, and much of what we talked about is what we're worried about.
Yeah.
And we have conversations like this daily, weekly with our friends, family, colleagues, and those minutes of complain, worry, and fear add up to hours. Mm-hmm. And over the course of a month, just say hypothetically, we complain collectively at least 6 to 10 hours a month, and probably more. But let's say it's 10 hours.
Yeah.
Take 2 of those hours and engage in something, make a commitment, and it doesn't have to be a super sophisticated effort. Anything that you can step into, as I write about, there's a home for everyone, a lane for everybody.
Yeah.
So spend a fraction of that or a portion of that time that obviates the thing you're worried about anyway. And more importantly, by engaging, it assuages your apprehension, it assuages your concern. You build connections and friendships, and you sleep better at night. So, people need to step into it because the devil is not so good, but you can navigate that by improving the outcome. So that's what I would encourage people to do and or keep doing.
What should they stop doing?
They have to stop demonizing the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. Because if all these 80 or more NGOs are doing the best they can, sprinting forward and as effective as they possibly can be, we'll lose. Mm-hmm. We need to partner in a constellation of, it's like, this may not be the best analogy, but maybe the Democratic Party is the sun and all these 80 organizations are stars, but we're all part of this constellation, mm-hmm. right? And we will not succeed in the near term, let alone the long term, if we don't invest. And there's reason to be frustrated with the Democratic Party, but keep in mind that we've been so much more successful than we feel.
Yeah.
We've won 7 of the last 9 presidential elections by popular vote. Now, the Electoral College is the problem. But nonetheless, we're winning. We won in 2018 big time. We won in 2022. We won in 2020, 2022. Special elections in 2023, overwhelming outcomes in 2025, and we haven't missed or lost a single special election since Trump's been in office. So we just didn't win the big prize, and that's what is the overarching concern. My point being, we win, and And if we stop demonizing the Democratic Party, we can sustain our movement and regain and hold on to power.
Okay, Gary, got about 30 seconds. What should we start doing?
We should start making a commitment. In the book, I have a one-pager on a commitment pledge. And there's a menu of choices of things you can do. You read the book, skim the book, identify one or more activities that speak to you, and then print out that page and make a commitment, because making that commitment brings the intention into more likely a reality.
Very good. Very good. Gary, your new book, We Are the Power to Win the Future, is excellent, and I recommend it highly to our listeners. Where can they get a hold of it?
You can get it from your local bookstore. You can order it there and have it, shipped to your bookstore, potentially maybe shipped to you. You can get it through Barnes & Noble. You can get it on Amazon. It was released a week ago, and it was the number one new release on Amazon for political advocacy and civil rights.
Wow,
so
congratulations. That's wonderful.
Traction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are not happy with Amazon, so there are other choices.
Yeah.
And there's an ebook, too.
Great. Well, Gary, thanks so much for coming on Be Bold America. It's been a real honor to speak with you today, and I wish you the best of luck as you continue your activism in support of democracy. As Joel would say, our future depends on it.
Thank you. Real pleasure to be part of this, and thank you.
Very good. What's up next on Be Bold America? Please join Jill on June 5th for a very special interview with the author of The Judgment of Gender, Allison T. Butler, who examines how women are both centered and silenced and maligned in popular culture. Grounded in critical media literacy, Allison explores a generational legacy in which media harms women, and she unpacks what it means when women are cast as, quote, problematic, unquote. Allison Butler takes a look at celebrity stories and those thrust into the spotlight with more nuance, including the infamously sensationalized coverage of Britney Spears, Anita Hill, and Monica Lewinsky. The Judgment of Gender employs insights from critical media literacy to guide readers in deconstructing problematic coverage and responding to the media's treatment of women. So please join Jill on Friday, June 5th at 5 p.m. for The Judgment of Gender. As a reminder, Be Bold America is available as a podcast. Now you may listen to the show anytime for free by subscribing through your favorite podcast platform or by joining Be Bold America's news group. To do so, visit jillcodyauthor.com and complete the pop-up form. I want to give a special thank you to our excellent program engineer, Elena Wachter, and to our station's program director, Howard Feldstein. You are listening to KSQD Santa Cruz and KSQT Prunedale. Many voices, one station. Listen worldwide, online at ksqd.org. My name is Mike Clancy, and I want to thank you for listening to Be Bold America. Until next time, keep, stop, start.